So for the 12th Doctor, it's Sleep No More. I was prepared to reserve judgment on this story because we're meant to be getting a sort of sequel, which might explain some of what happened. But I just felt that the story wasn't well explained enough. I felt it was trying to have its cake and eat it too, with the kind of framing device and ending saying, oh, this didn't really happen, or oh, it did, oh, maybe it didn't, oh, maybe it did. No, I was really annoyed by that. There's something to be said for the ending, which means that everyone watching is now a victim of the Sandmen, but the problem is we never get to see the result of that, so it doesn't mean anything. Skipping over Doctor 11 because he's had 2 entries, we come back to the 10th Doctor, and my choice is Fear Her. Now, I know this is an easy one to pick on, but I don't actually mind the guest cast in this one, and I think Chloe Webber is a good character and well played. I like the relationship between her and the alien creature, but I just feel that this is too similar to the Idiot's Lantern. I think it's deliberate, but I don't think it does enough new with that idea, and it just feels uneven and underbaked to me. It's not a bad story, but it's the worst of a pretty good bunch. For the 9th Doctor, this is a tough choice, because obviously he doesn't have many stories, but I also feel that Series 1 is one of the best overall seasons or series of Doctor Who. But if I have to choose one that I would jettison and I wouldn't miss, it would probably be The Long Game. I know it sets up for the finale, and I know it writes out Adam, but I just feel that everything else around it is much, much stronger. So it's not a matter of this story did something wrong, it's just that every other story did their stuff better. Okay, now the 8th Doctor is going to be hard because he's had 2 televised stories, the movie and Night of the Doctor. Maybe you can count Sharda as well on Red Button. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one of his audios, because that has Paul McGann in it. I'm going to choose an earlier one of Paul McGann's audios, and that is The Creed of the Crommen. Now, this is part of the Divergent story arc, which was kind of polarising. People liked it, people didn't like it. I quite enjoyed it. It was a nice change of pace and felt different from the other mainline audios. But the big problem with Creed of the Crommen, it's written by classic series writer Philip Martin. Now, that's not a bad thing in and of itself, but Philip Martin wrote 2 stories for television, and kind of The Creed of the Crommen is like his greatest hits. It doesn't do much new, it just transposes those ideas from his 1980s stories into a setting 20 years later. And it's not that interesting, and at times it's downright sadistic. And yeah, I just didn't like it very much. Another hard one for the 7th Doctor, because this is one of my favourite eras of the show overall, and I know I'm in a bit of a minority over that. Don't care. So, much like the 9th Doctor, I'm going to be picking my least favourite rather than something I actively hate, and it's Silver Nemesis. It's a 6 out of 10, but I just feel that a lot of it is quite unbalanced. You know, we've got the Cybermen, we've got Lady Painfort, and we've got De Flores and his paramilitaries. But yeah, you don't really need De Flores and his paramilitaries in there. They're kind of just there to pad out the running time. And there are some lovely bits. There's the Doctor and Ace jamming the Cybermen with a tape of jazz and wandering through the countryside whistling along. And that's a beautiful moment, and it's a great triumph of sort of humanity over the technology of the Cybermen. But it's weird, the story is short, it's 3 episodes long, but it still feels like it's full of padding. It retreads the solution from Remembrance of the Daleks, which I don't think would be so much of a problem if its own story was a bit more polished. For the 6th Doctor, this one is easy. It's the Twin Dilemma. Yeah, it's the story with the slug monsters, and the poo-brown corridors, and the Doctor trying to strangle Perry. It's a mess! The week before this, we have Caves of Androzani, which I don't think is a great Doctor Who story because it's very, very dark in tone, but it's a wonderful piece of drama. The Twin Dilemma fails even at that. You know, we've got supporting characters we don't like, we've got 2 awful twins in the title role. We have a villain who is literally a cross-eyed slug. We have an old Time Lord mentor of the Doctors we haven't heard of before, played by a classic actor, but played really badly. And we end a season on the Doctor being unstable and unlikable. Twin dilemma. Doctor number 4, another really strong run of stories. There are some turkeys in there, some underbaked ones. I'm going to go for Underworld. Now, Underworld's easy to pick on, but I'm not actually picking on the special effects. The green screen work in Underworld is pretty decent. And part of that is due to the fact that the director of this story was hired because he was a technical director. He knew how to get those green screen shots done. The problem with this, of course, is he hadn't worked much with actors on characterization. And we have a script from Bob Baker and Dave Martin who don't always deliver the strongest characterization. We have a bunch of actors in this story who don't really know what their characters are. There's a lot of lines which are just delivered in a monotone, which are very important and could have done with some emotion happening in there. There are some nice exchanges between the Doctor and Leela and the cave dwellers who need to be freed from the evil computer oracle. Unfortunately, at the end of it though, this story just feels a bit lightweight, and we feel like we haven't got to know any of the characters because they haven't had much character to work with. I can still watch it, it's not terrible, but in this case it's a story that both sucks and blows. For the third Doctor, I've had to choose one of the few direct sequels that the classic series has, and that is the Monster of Peloton. It's a sequel to the much better Curse of Peloton from a couple of years earlier, and part of the problem here is the Monster of Peloton doesn't do enough new with the ideas laid down in the Curse of Peloton. We get a bit more of a look at sexual and gender politics than we usually get in classic Doctor Who, and of course this story is an allegory for a miners' strike that was happening at the time, but you're taking Curse of Peloton, you're putting a new analogy into it, you're extending it by 2 episodes, you're making the Ice Warriors villains again when there were really interesting sympathetic characters in the Curse of Peloton who weren't villains. You're kind of taking what made something successful and not adding anything, and in some cases making it worse. So yeah, Monster of Peloton.